Welcome to the Renegade Nutrition Podcast, where we discuss all things wellness.
I'm Eleni Welch, nutritionist.
And I'm Kay Boyer, health enthusiast. Welcome back, Renegades.
Welcome, Renegades.
Welcome to another week of good information from Eleni. You know, I laid in bed last night and I had a really funny one. I lost it. I'll remember it. I'll do it next time.
I'll come back to you.
Okay,
Maybe when you go to sleep, you'll wake up with it.
Yeah, yep. And I'll make sure to write it down. But this week, you're going to help us out with, I actually think this is like mind-blowing. Emotional things in your body can lead to chronic disease. I mean, you told me the title, but you say it the right way. But this is mind-blowing for me.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. Tell me the exact title.
Well, it's not my title, but it's the talk I got it from, so we'll retitle it. But the talk I got it from was Emotional Roots of Chronic Disease and How to Bring Yourself into Balance.
I love this kind of stuff. The mindset and body connection is the most fascinating for me.
So last week I shared from the Health and Longevity Summit that I virtually attended.
Yes.
And so last week we were talking about longevity, and one of the things we started talking about was the emotional impacts.
Yes.
That so the impacts of emotional stress and trauma on our epigenome and our genetics, and how emotional stress or lack thereof can turn on and turn off certain genes.
Yes. It's fascinating.
Health affecting genes. Yep. So today we're going to get into that specific topic more deeply. And before we do, hello to our listeners in Spain. Spain.
Yay.
I traveled to Spain for a few days.
Yes.
On the way to Greece and Italy. We stayed there for a couple of nights. This was back in 2000. Oh, God.
I know. I got to think.
When did I graduate college? It was when I graduated college before I went to grad school.
Yeah.
I guess it would have been around 2011.
Okay.
Oh,
yes.
God. That's crazy.
Yeah, we got old.
We've gotten old.
Yes,
I'm like, has it really been 12 years since then? Yes, it has.
Yes.
So when I graduated college.
Okay.
Yes. When I graduated college, my parents took me on a trip to Greece to visit my family and then to Italy. But we stopped in Spain for a few days.
Love it.
On the way there and on the way back. And on the way back when we were staying in Spain, which I loved.
Yes.
They happened to be in the middle of the students were protesting.
Okay.
Because I can't remember the exact things, so don't quote me on this, but I believe that the education there was free and they wanted to start charging for college tuition there. There's actually a lot of countries where college tuition is free. You just have to pass a test to get into college. Anyway, so they were protesting either a raise in prices for tuition or the fact that they would be charging for tuition. So students were protesting in the square that our hotel was in.
Oh.
So they had blocked off all the streets.
Yep.
And my parents, of course, being hippies, were like, oh, you should see a protest. This is cool.
Yes.
So we went out
I'm a hippie. Let's do it.
Go be in the middle of it. And so it actually got kind of violent.
Oh.
Not while we were there, but then the police ended up coming. And of course, there's always
yes,
those kids aren't carrying weapons. And of course, they get clubbed by the police. That just seems to be the inevitable protest story. But
that's terrible. Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, they were blocking all the main traffic to downtown. So you couldn't get downtown. So it was fortunate we were just planning to walk wherever we went anyway.
Yes.
But while I was out there, not having any idea what they were protesting, I do speak some Spanish, but not enough to really understand.
Function well, yeah.
Yeah. Just because, they were just shouting and it's all in different, you can't pick that out, right?
Yeah, right.
Anyway, so I just kind of joined in and was yelling with them.
Yes!
Support the young people, the energy, right?
Yes, I'm here for it.
And there was this girl there that also came out maybe of her apartment and hopped into the protest, and somehow she looked like she was about my age, and she and I locked eyes with each other across the protest.
Yeah. And
she got this huge grin on her face, and I had this big smile. It was we both knew the other person didn't know why they were there and why they were yelling.
But we're here for it.
And it was somehow our souls connected across all the people. This was my favorite thing. I just fully connected with this girl. who was like my age. We never, of course, saw each other again. And I will just never forget that moment because we both like were in the middle of like, Viva, you know, and then it's like eyes locked and we both just got this huge smile. Like neither of us knows what we're doing here. We're just protesting to protest. Like this is just fun, right? Like
maybe she's a listener. Maybe God will bring her back to
I hope so. I hope she's one of our listeners in Spain. Maybe she remembers that American girl that she
What town was it?
Oh, I don't remember exactly where we were staying.
Okay,
that's a good question.
But like a university town.
We were near Barcelona, so.
Okay, I'm trying to think. So I went to Barcelona back 2007. Gosh, that really ages me when I graduated. And my sister stayed there a semester. So she knew the whole round and took us all around. But I think we did Sevilla, but then we went down to Barcelona. But I loved it, man.
I would have to look at where we were.
Yes, I want to go. Let's just travel to all the people that listen to us. Can you house us when we go over there? Can we stay with you?
So can you just keep us for free?
Yes, please. And feed us your amazing food.
Feed us your food, and we'll document how people in other countries this is something I want to do is the longevity processes of the people that live longer. I'm like, I want to travel to all those cultures and just spend some time with them, eating the food they eat and doing the things they do.
Okay, I can't believe we didn't talk about this in the longevity podcast. The blue zones.
The blue zones would be cool.
Right? So then it's like, because their diet, a lot of times it's highly Mediterranean, which would be a lot of here. So anyway, let's do it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Anyway, that's my funny story about Spain. And I remember that girl, and now it's been 12 years, but I still remember that moment of like looking at her, and we were just instant friends. Like you felt it. We're like instant friends. We're like,
yes.
If we lived in this, we would be BFFs if we lived in the same place. Yes.
Want to do a podcast together?
Yes. Here's a fun fact about Spain.
Yes.
In Spain, the life expectancy is on average 82 years.
Ooh.
79 for men and 85 for women, which is up there with the big hitters of life expectancy like Switzerland, Italy, and Japan.
Love it.
And I just thought that was such an appropriate fact since we were reflecting on my notes from my virtual attendance at the Health and Longevity Summit. That seemed like a good one to share.
Good job, Spain.
Good job, Spain. Thank you. So we will come visit you and live your lifestyle and eat your food for a while.
We want to.
We just need you to house us for free.
Yes, please.
We don't. This podcast doesn't make money.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it makes like $42 a year. So,
so help us, please.
Help. Yes. So, as I shared last week, I attended virtually the Health and Longevity Summit put on by Commune, and several of their talks seemed like excellent topics for this podcast, and I wanted to share the information I learned from them because I think if I'm going to go to a summit and learn from it, all of our listeners should benefit from that.
I love that. Spread the good news.
And I feel like the people who are speaking would support that too, right? Like, they're people who want to like share their information with the masses. So
yes, and their information is like typically free on all their podcasts and everything. Like more good knowledge for anyone in the world is a happier world.
But credit where credit is due. This talk in particular about the emotional roots of chronic disease was by Dr. Gabor Mate.
Alrighty.
And Anita Morjani. Morjani? I don't know.
I don't know. I like the more honey, but...
More honey.
Yeah.
Morjani.
Yes.
And then the second talk was how to bring yourself into balance with Dr. Jim Gordon. So I'm going to speak out of those two presentations and share some of their information from you. So Anita Morjani is the author of a book called Dying to Be Me. Have you ever read this?
No, but it sounds like something I would love.
After this, I think we're going to read it. It's literally in my shopping cart on Amazon. So I'm going to support Anita. Since she gave me valuable information for this podcast, her book is in my shopping cart on Amazon. I will buy it.
Okay, I'll get it too.
And I'm just going to share her story, which she shared at this longevity summit because her story was so cool and so impactful. And I hope after I read her book, I can convince her to come and tell this story herself and be on our podcast because, oh my gosh, her story was so cool. But it was significant enough that I thought when I heard it, I was like, wow, this is really kind of a eye-opening story, and I want to share it with our listeners. So,
Edge of my seat.
So, in 2006, Anita was dying from cancer. She had end-stage lymphoma, had tumors the size of golf balls literally throughout her entire lymph system, which travels throughout your whole body. She weighed 85 pounds and had completely wasted away, couldn't walk, was in a wheelchair, and her lungs were so filled with fluid that she couldn't lay down on her back or she would like start drowning in her fluid.
What?
So she went into a coma. This is end-stage lymphoma.
Literally stinking in a coma. Okay.
Yep. So end-stage lymphoma, she is in the hospital. She is dying. She is in hospice. Went into a coma. Her family was told those were her final hours. So they gathered around her and were praying. While she was in the coma, she had an out-of-body experience, left her body. We're familiar with those, right?
Yes.
She entered a state, she says, of perfect clarity where she understood her purpose on earth and why she had the cancer. And she also understood that she had not fulfilled yet what her soul had come here to do and be. So she said she experienced many things in that state.
Whoa.
Life suddenly made sense, and she reached a point where she had the choice to either come back to her body or move on into like the next realm.
Whoa.
Okay.
I got goosebumps.
Yes. Her story is cool. I really want her to come on and like tell it herself.
Yeah, I want to.
But I want to read her book. So she wanted to stay because obviously like in the place she was in, she was surrounded by beauty. And she said she was in such a state of peace and surrounded by this feeling of unconditional love.
Wow.
But her dad appeared to her, who had passed away years prior, and told her that she needed to come back because it wasn't her time yet. And she knew at that moment that he spoke to her that if she came back, because she understood her purpose, knew who she was and that she wasn't just a physical body, that if she chose to come back, her body would be healed here on earth. So her dad told her, now that you know the truth, go and live your life fearlessly. And so she chose to come back to earth. She started to come out of the coma. She said she was in the coma for 30 hours.
Whoa.
And then over the next 5 weeks, her tumors shrunk and shrunk until she went home cancer-free.
What?
So end-stage lymphoma, literally dying in a coma, realizes her purpose on earth and knows if she comes back, her body will be healed, which I think is one of the key points, right? Is she knew her body would be healed.
Wow.
If she came back, the tumor shrunk. Now she shares this experience. She like does these talks.
Wow. Yeah, why isn't this a TV show that's like on primetime TV that we all get to see? This is amazing.
Because I think people hear those stories and don't believe them, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's up to you whether you I totally believe those stories. But
yeah, I'm here for it. I want all of it. Yeah.
And part of her story that she shares is that before that experience, one of the things she came to understand about her cancer was that it was emotionally rooted. So she was afraid of a lot of things, but was also very repressed because of the culture she grew up in. She grew up in a culture where women were repressed and their voices were not heard.
Yeah.
And her value was based on how valuable she was to the men in her community. So to her father, to her future husband. She said everything women did, they did to serve the men of their community. So women were not allowed to be angry, not allowed to lose their temper. And they were not allowed to work unless their husbands approved of their working. Women's values were judged on how good they were at housework. And she says she was terrible at housework.
It would be a terrible. I would have no value. I'm with her.
Value.
Oh my.
So she had this sense of very low self-worth and self-esteem.
Wow. I just feel like tons of our female listeners will be like, I get you.
I could relate.
Like, can relate. Like,
Yeah.
even, and mine went up to be that, to that degree. Like, obviously that's like a heavy degree of it. But I think most women or anyone, like I can relate with this. Like, I
think
feel that.
it's a chronic, like we rate our value based on what we do versus who we are.
Right.
Like that seems to be a pretty universal theme.
Wow.
But in the other realm, she realized that was not who she was.
Amen, sister.
And in her words, she said she realized she was somebody powerful, that her soul came here for a purpose. And she realized that her soul wanted to fly, to be free, and to be everything it was intended to be. And she said it was really interesting that when she had traveled to the other realm, she experienced the presence of her father, who was the person who on earth repressed her and frightened her the most.
Whoa.
So she said, but like in life, her father repressed her. in death, her father is the one who set her free. So I thought that was really cool too, that she had that healing experience with him. And it makes you realize also who he was on earth was not really who he was.
Yeah.
And it was more a result of
his conditioning
and culture. Exactly.
And fear and right.
And he also had to be set free from that. And then he could set her free from that. So I thought that was really cool too, because it kind of puts into perspective the people who are maybe not positive relationships in our lives, and the realization that that might not be who they are either. You know, that's the result of them being conditioned and fear-based and repressed.
Whoa, this is like, I gotta meet this lady. I'm buying her book for sure now.
So she shared that prior to that experience, that out of body experience, she was like a chronic people pleaser. I think there are many of our listeners who can relate to that.
Aren't we all?
She wanted to rescue everybody and help everybody, and she was attached to the outcome of how other people did.
I feel like she is all of our doppelgangers.
I know. I'm like, that I can relate to, especially as a nutritionist.
Yes.
Other people's outcomes, like I'm very much invested, right?
Right.
And not even just of my clients. I'm invested in the outcomes of the health of the world because I want to help everybody.
Right. Our bleeding
and I
hearts.
see people like suffering. I'm like, I just want to help you. I just want you to be better, right?
Yes.
But that's what actually made her so sick. And she had this realization once she was kind of free from the entanglement of it all, and she was in that place of like clarity, she realized,
go be free.
That is what made her sick. And so today she said she's actually living out her purpose, and she said she thinks she is the happiest person on the planet because she loves her life.
I love it.
And she was set free from that like oppression and that need to be a chronic people pleaser. So I just thought it was so cool what her dad said. Now that you know the truth, go and live fearlessly is what he told her. Go and live fearlessly now that you know the truth. And I think that is just such a cool experience that we can all kind of draw from in one way or another, is that so much of chronic disease, as we'll get into, is rooted in emotional imbalances and the feeling of being responsible for everybody outside of ourselves.
Yes. Yes. That is sort of a concept that's hard to do, because if someone else is in pain, I'm like, well, how? I don't deserve to be happy right now. They're in pain. What do I do? But there is, to be a healthy person and to even be honoring to life, there does need to be a separation of like, well, that's their journey and their space, and I can do what I can. But let's say, if it's something sad, I want to be there to help and to grieve and to heal. But if it's something that is kind of like their issue that they aren't doing with, we don't need to take on that burden. We need to know that that's their journey,
right?
And to kind of take care of ourselves. Like, this is woo-wee. This is powerful stuff.
So Dr. Mate was sharing with her. They were speaking together. So he said, this was kind of his part after she shared her story, is whatever we experience emotionally has an impact on our physiology because of our mind-body unity. And we had an episode where we interviewed Christopher Lee Mayer. And I think Christopher Lee Maher, he was a former Navy SEAL, and he shares all about the impacts of emotional stress and trauma on our bodies and our physiology. That's a really important episode to go back and listen to. So this is very like high level general. That talk in particular got into it more deeply, but but he talked about some things that I thought were really interesting. Dr. Mate did in this talk. So he said, our function is protection, survival, reproduction, and our body is one system working towards those functions. So whereas Western medicine kind of loses sight of that unity of the body, and you tend to like go see a gastroenterologist or, a reproductive endocrinologist, like you go see specific people for specific body parts that aren't working. But really the whole body is in unity, and you need to be working with somebody who understands how the body works as a whole, because you may be having thyroid conditions that affect your reproductive system, right? So you can't just be focusing on one part of the body. You need to be looking at the body as a whole. And the emotional system is as much a part of that body, part of that survival, reproductive, and protective apparatus as anything else. like our immune system. So just like we have an immune system, we have an emotional system. So there's a direct connection specifically between those two systems. And when you repress yourself emotionally, you also repress your immune system.
Wow.
So this is what's really like interesting about that. And then Anita's story, right? So everyone has cancer cells roaming in their body right now. Like I have cancer cells, you have cancer cells. All of our listeners, you all have cancer cells that are roaming around our body. The reason only some people get cancer and not everybody gets cancer, despite the fact that we all have those cancerous cells, is that when our immune system is functioning appropriately, it scavenges and removes those cells so they don't attach and proliferate.
Okay.
But in an unhealthy immune system, the immune system is not able to keep up with or recognize those cancer cells, and that gives cancer an opportunity to take hold. So when we repress our emotional system, we repress our immune system.
Whoa.
And then that can make our immune system less likely to find and remove foreign invaders. So who gets sick? And this was what Dr. Mate was sharing because he has a medicine practice. And he was saying of the people that come into his practice, these are the things he's observed, is that the people who get sick are those who are more concerned with the emotional needs of others than their own.
Whoa.
To the point of ignoring their own emotional needs.
Whoa.
Those who carry the weight of the world, who want to help everyone else rather than taking care of their own needs.
Wow.
Those who repress healthy anger. Those who tend to be people pleasers and to be very nice.
like every woman I know about.
Yes. Yeah. And we'll get into that too. And then those who have what he calls the fatal beliefs. So the fatal beliefs, he says, are I am responsible for how other people feel, and I must never disappoint anybody.
Wow.
So he said those are the people, as like a medical professional, those are the types of people he sees coming to his clinic who are sick.
Wow.
And he gave a really powerful example of it. He was talking about repressing anger, like healthy anger, you know?
Yeah, right.
Right. But he said repressing your anger is like trying to hold a beach ball under the water. Like you can imagine how much effort that takes. And he said, now imagine the amount of energy it takes to repress your anger to the point that you aren't even aware it's there anymore, which is the state so many people are in.
Wow.
And so I just thought that was really a powerful example. Like you've now repressed it. It's so far beneath the surface that you don't even realize you're doing it anymore.
Wow.
Hey there, Renegades. Eleni here, briefly interrupting this episode of the Renegade Nutrition Podcast. I wanted to highlight a company that Kay and I have recently discovered that we love, and that company is Bulletproof. Bulletproof sells high-quality nutritional supplements, and every product that Kay and I have tried from them personally, we have found to be excellent. It's important when you choose a supplement that it contain the bioactive forms in order for it to be effective, and Bulletproof has just the right forms in just the right amounts. Right now, if you go to bulletproof.com and use the code RENEGADE15 at checkout, you can receive 15% off your order. That's Renegade, RENEGADE 15. Use that code at checkout to get 15% off, and we'll earn a small commission too. Thanks for your support. All right, back to this week's episode of the Renegade Nutrition Podcast. And it was, so here's an excerpt from a study I found. So I heard this concept and then I went and kind of researched it outside of this talk. So here's a excerpt from a study I found on emotional repression and chronic disease. This is a direct quote I'm reading. So studies by Pennebaker and his colleagues demonstrated that individuals who repress their emotions also suppress their body's immunity, making them more vulnerable to a variety of illnesses, ranging from common colds to cancer. Again, individuals who mask and deny their inward feelings characteristically suffer the most. Other findings have demonstrated that patients with cancer and other forms of malignancy that chronically mask their experiences and feelings are more liable to die despite treatments than patients who express their feelings.
Whoa.
Empirical evidence indicates a substantial reduction in pain and discomfort from arthritis following the expression of negative. As a matter of fact, the amount of relief from pain and discomfort reported by patients with chronic illness has been found to be commensurate with how able they are to deeply and authentically express their emotions and feelings.
This is huge.
Isn't that interesting? So that was an excerpt from the article Consequences of Repression of Emotion, Physical Health, Mental Health, and General Well-Being by Patel et al.
Whoa. Okay. So I've been feeling, Eleni, that in my old age, I'm only 38, but in my elder years of my life, I have noticed in myself that I am just like, I was people-pleasing all my life. I'm just going to do what I want. And now this has been very freeing for me, and I'm doing a lot of good things in business and in our community, and it's actually very helpful for people. But it's been a journey. It's been a big journey, right? I've had a lot of like counselors, mentors, healers help me out in this, and I'm much happier today. But here's my point. It was hard to get here because... And I just want to like talk this through because I can't quite make sense of it yet. The line where me getting what I want is so good for my own soul. It's good for the world, as opposed to, oh, now she's selfish.
Uh-huh.
So I maybe we can like talk this through together, because I'm finding I have responsibilities. I have kids. I have bills. I've got some good responsibilities that I have to wake up and stand tall and keep to these responsibilities, and I do that. But once those responsibilities are filled, Eleni, I am doing whatever I want, and
right.
I made that decision, and I have never been happier. And I didn't live that way. I'm a people pleaser. I definitely took on everyone's burdens, and I've been sad for years, and I finally just broke.
Right.
And I thought I no longer give a beep. I don't know if we're cussing anymore on here. We're doing better. So I no longer give a flip, right?
Yeah.
But my line is this. If I take care of my responsibilities, and I stand up tall, if it's good for me, good for my community, good for my world, I'm going to freaking do it.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of there.
Yeah.
So, but that's that line where I even said to some people, I was like, yeah, if I want to do it, I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. And they said, oh, that sounds kind of selfish. And they were like, oh, well, that kind of sounds sinful. Mm-hmm. So talk me through. Does he talk about, like, where's that line?
In this talk, yes. Not.
Okay.
He doesn't. He has other presentations I haven't listened to yet.
But what's your instinctual answer? My instinct,
and I don't know what's
right and
wrong in that, because that is a really hard question, right?
Right.
And maybe not one we're equipped to answer, but my instinct is Christ died to carry the burdens, like Christ carried the burdens of the world, and he sits at the right hand of the Father, representing those burdens of the world. So in one sense, I think there's a difference between carrying that burden yourself, which is not your job, but also being a Christ-like loving person on the earth and helping people in a way that you can. So to me, like, my service to the world is this like podcast and what I do one-on-one with nutritional counseling.
And who you are as a person.
Who I am as a person. So that's how I help people, right? I'm responsible for the information I share and the truths that I speak. So every word I speak, I'm responsible for, right? So it's my burden to like always be before the Lord, asking him for his wisdom. And I do that before podcasts and before counseling, like wellness counseling sessions with people, right? Like if I'm on the right track. And if I'm doing my day right, I ask him for his wisdom. So I'm responsible for that piece. What I'm not responsible for is somebody else's outcome from that and whether they apply that information to their life or not. So for
their
me,
life journey.
Where that line gets drawn is like, when are you taking on burdens that are not your own and aren't your place to carry, which a lot of times have to do with what decisions other people are making in their lives, right? So you can share your information, share your wisdom that you've gotten,
Yes.
plant the seed, but you're not responsible for the person who then has to water it,
Yes.
weed it, tend the garden.
Yes.
Right? Like that's their responsibility. But I think where people then kind of cross the line, and I'm guilty of this as like a nutritional counselor,
Yes.
is I might share that information with somebody. So maybe I share some nutritional information and I tell them how to do something right. Then where I'm guilty of carrying their burden is like, I'm like, oh, but are they weeding? Let me help them weed it. Let me help them water it. But if you do that for people,
right,
you are not empowering them.
Yes.
To like take care of their own lives and to live their own life in their own authentic expression, right? So it's kind of a fine line, and I get where people think it's selfish, right? So if I say, for example, with like my nutritional clients, if I say I'm not going to see more than 2 nutritional clients a week because physically that drains me. And I have people who are like they want to see me, right? And I might have to push them out like 6 weeks because that's the boundary I've set. So there's part of me that feels like, well, it's kind of selfish because I'm putting my own health first. But then there's the part of me that's like, no, but they're the one who waited 10 years through this like chronic disease to contact me, right? Like they're responsible for the outcomes that are happening with their health. Even once I meet with them, they're responsible for that. So I can give them all the guidance I want. They're responsible for the outcomes, not me. They're on their own hero's journey. They have to apply those outcomes. So I think it can feel kind of like, but I should be doing all these hours of community service and I should be out there. And there is a place for that sort of denial of self, right? That like Christ embodied. And he lived that way. But at the same time, I'm also recognize that I'm a human being and I'm not Christ. So, so first of all, like living as him is going to look very different in my life because I'm not him and I'm not here on earth to live the purpose he already lived, right? I'm here to live the purpose he's assigned to me. So I think it's like, I don't know if that makes sense or if I'm just rambling, but to me it is like when we take on burdens that are not our own to carry and and feel responsible for everybody else's outcomes, that's where it becomes harmful to our health because ultimately we have no control over that, right? I have no control over the client that I see that comes, here's my information and does nothing with it. Even though that's hard for me and I feel like I want to go help them water that seed. I want to help them bury it in the soil. I want to help them weed that garden, but that's not my place.
And you need that separation of like, and I do think the world works better when everyone can carry their journey and then help their family, community, world, but in a way that makes sense for themselves.
And in an empowering way, right? Like how much more empowered do you feel when you get to be the authority over your own health and life versus somebody else just telling you what to do and you just following them all the time? Like,
okay, this is why I grabbed my phone. Okay, the 2 quotes, teach someone to fish, they'll fish for their life, fish for them, they get 1 meal, whatever. Okay, then also this is called A Medicine Woman's Prayer. It's, look, I'm going to cry when I read it. It's like, I'm such a crier.
Kay is a crier.
I wrote, so it's, I will not rescue you, for you are not powerless. I will not fix you, for you are not broken. I will not heal you, for I see you in your wholeness. I will walk with you through the darkness as you remember your light. So that idea of like, I will not rescue you because you're not powerless. Like, I'm here for you. Here's all the resources. Like, I'm going to help you. I'm going to support you. But it's true. Like, it is your hero's journey.
Yes.
And I think for women, us taking on everyone else's journey, it leads to chronic disease. And I feel that. It is just that line now of being comfortable with like me saying that there's a line of saying like, this is your journey. I'm empowering you. That's not selfish on my part. It's just how the world can work. Like, and it's like the most healthy for myself and the most healthy for you to pick it up.
And I think there's a reason why women struggle the most with that because by nature, we are more intuitive. We are more nurturing, care-oriented. We feel responsibility because that's ingrained in us because we need to care for our children, right? That's like, that's an important,
biologically.
That's an important instinct. And honestly, the instinct is to put our kids' safety before our own and our kids' well-being before our own, which is important up to a point, right? But at some point, our children hopefully become independent to the point where now they're in charge of their health and safety. But
and are able
as
to be.
women, we just internalize that for everybody on earth. And I think we become disassociated from what is our responsibility and what isn't.
And what isn't. That's fair.
It kind of blurs the line because we feel that innately, instinctually for our children, but the world is not our children, right?
Yes.
And when we tend to be the caregivers in our family, so women tend to be the caregivers. I know many male caregivers as well, but
yeah, men can have these feelings.
Yeah,
as well.
women tend to be the caregivers for elderly parents, for children, for anybody who needs them. And so I see this very often, and I talk about this a lot on this podcast, but I see this very often in my female population, especially women who have already been parents, is that they really can't see how much their health and their well-being is impacting those around them. So they have a very hard time putting their own needs first. So maybe the client needs to take like an hour every day for herself. Like she needs that.
Yeah.
She needs to take several hours a day to like prepare nutritious food for her body. But she won't do it because she feels like
selfish. You need to do
right.
it.
She feels like she doesn't have the time because, well, I need to go take care of this person and that person. How much of what you're doing could be delegated to somebody else? You just don't think they will do it as well as you. So that's something to be honest.
And you're doing more than you need to.
Right.
Pass off the baton.
Pass it on to other people who can help carry that burden if that's an option. But also understanding if you are in so much chronic pain that you can't lift your parent if they fall, you can't be a good caregiver for them. So you need to address the root issues of chronic pain or chronic disease in your own body in order to be a good caregiver for that child, for that parent. So I think it's like, it's hard for people because they just are ingrained to put everybody else's needs first. Right. But at the end of the day, that doesn't make you a better caregiver. What makes you a better caregiver is putting your own emotional and physical and mental needs first so that you can show up as your best self.
I'm giving up. I'm giving an applaud to this.
So I do think that's hard because I think we are taught in society that that's selfish.
Right.
But there's a line between, like, I know if I see more than 2 clients a week right now being in my 3rd trimester of pregnancy, like, I'm not going to be good for any of them. Yeah. Because I'm
then you're just stressed.
Tired. And
not helpful.
Stressed. Yes. And I'm not putting my own body's needs and the needs of this, like, baby.
Yes.
First, I'm putting the needs of my clients first, and that's not my responsibility. So to me, it's like I choose to be selfish so that I can be a better person when I'm around people.
Yes. I totally support that. And I think I'm going to carry that mantra now to be like, if someone says like, if I really am like, no, I'm really doing what I want now. And that doesn't mean I'm like, drug, sex, rock and roll with whoever. That's not what I'm saying. Obviously, if that's what you're saying, like that's not what I'm saying.
Right.
But I'm saying like I now want to paint my house blue or pink or whatever color, and I want to get a horse, and I want to do things that I never let myself do. And now that I'm doing it, to not say like this is selfish. I mean, why is that selfish? Like that is silly to think that it's selfish. Right. But anyway, that is so like, at least in my culture, which it would be more of like a conservative circles where more of that diet, like that Christian diet of self concept, right? Where I'm like, no, God wants you to live life abundantly, like have vibrant health, be joyful, like love the interactions on earth, like love the things he put on earth, like love the music that, you know, is on earth. I don't know. So this is like my growth as a 38-year-old, the journey I'm on. And I don't think it's selfish.
I don't think it's like, I think when Christ came, he healed people, right? So obviously the heart of God is that people be whole. Yeah. And so why do we feel like it's selfish to take the time to do the things we need to heal?
Because we're weird Americans and we're in this weird...
When that would have been what Christ wanted for us. Like he wanted you to be whole and healthy and happy.
Set you free, live abundantly, like... Yeah. I know.
And there's a difference between that and just being like an a-hole. So
right. Don't be an a-hole.
Right. Like, it's not like what we're talking about is like... Right. just never helping anybody who needs it. Never, like, there are times when we sacrifice what we need to help a friend who is in need.
Right.
Because that's what they need in that moment. Like, there are times you do that. But it's when people do that chronically.
Yes. I think this is a matter of, like, you're filling your cup. If you're so empty in your cup, I can't even help anyone because I'm so empty.
Right.
But if you, like, make yourself a priority, know your self-worth in God, know your self-worth in Christ, fill your tank up so much you're able to help others more.
Right.
But you're right. When you're an empty cup, it's like, dude, I ain't got nothing more to give. Peace out.
And then you show up to help somebody and you're not even that helpful.
Right.
So I think that is kind of the difference is like, yes, there are times. And I try to just always, my husband and I both try to always just be led in when and how we give our time.
Yeah.
And there are times, like for me being an introvert, where I need to be alone and I need to be home and I need to not have people around me.
Yeah, and that's not selfish. That's like not, you tending to you.
That's me refueling so that when I have a social interaction with somebody, I'm my best self instead of grumpy, cantankerous, irritable, drained, tired, right?
Yes.
Like that's not representative of who I am as a person. That's representative of who I am when I'm drained. So
And I took us on a big divergent path here. But I just to wrap it up and to bring us back here, like it really is just like treat yourself how I would treat a friend. Like if I know you're stressed and razzled, I'm like, go do something you love. Like go take time for you. Like you're an introvert, you need alone time. Of course I would say that for you.
Right.
So I should also say that for myself. You know, like
and I think the point of it is it's when you're repressing yourself to the point of you're literally suppressing your emotional and immune system.
Yes. Yeah.
And it is just you if you do that, you're not going to be your optimal self and you're not going to be living your life in the best service to the world. So we choose and deliberately say no to some things so that when we say yes to other things, the things we say yes to, we do really well.
Yes.
So it's like not like I say no just to say no because I never want to help anybody. I say no because I know you can help yourself.
Yes. Yes.
This situation, I know you can help yourself. I'm going to empower you by saying no and give you an opportunity to like grow.
So good.
And I'm going to say yes to this person over here who really does need somebody to hold their hand for a little bit. And then I'm going to let them go and be like, okay, like you're on your own.
This is like my dog. I'm going to throw in a dog story every podcast just for fun. So my little Scooty, my little Australian Shepherd, he's real chubby because I want him to think that food is abundant. I don't want him to like bite at my kids when they're eating. So let's just say my dog knows that food is abundant, if you know what I'm saying. He's a big dog. So now he can't get into my car. He's too chubby. So then I have to like lift up his little buns. And now we call it learned helplessness because now I help him every time. So he goes to the car and he just lays there like he can't get up there. And I'm like, anyway. I'll just talk about my dog every podcast.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, that's an example of what we don't want to do to people.
Right. Like we don't want to learn helplessness. You can do it.
Do it yourself. I can't always be there for you.
Yeah.
And I think too, that's just all part of understanding you have to find your balance too. So it's about not suppressing your emotions, not suppressing your own needs, not suppressing your own health for somebody else's, but also knowing at what point do you feel better if you take care of somebody else, if that makes sense. Because there is an extent to which when you've hit your capacity. Like, when you have room to give.
Yes.
So give to that point, and when it starts becoming unhealthy, that's when you need to recognize, this isn't healthy.
So then it's a matter of listening to your intuition, having the self-worth to give yourself that say. Like then we're getting into that like wellness stuff of like, value yourself and listen to yourself.
Knowing to ask for help.
Yeah.
Because truthfully, like so many people have repressed their stress so much that they don't even know that they're stressed. And if you don't even know that you're stressed or angry or sad or hurt or frustrated or any of those emotions, if you have repressed that to the point where you just can't even recognize your own feelings, your own emotions anymore, then how are you going to deal with that? or release those emotions. And as we know, chronic stress is undermining our immune system. So even in conventional medicine, doctors know that chronic stress causes what? Ulcers, right? Like we all know that.
Right.
It causes weight gain. It causes like increased risk of heart disease. We even in the most unintuitive branches of medicine, we know that. So when it comes to like healthy anger and we're suppressing that and we're not letting it go, we know that that has health consequences, even from the least in tune branches of medicine. So I think the emotional system, a healthy emotional system, creates boundaries. So it allows in what is healthy and nourishing and keeps out what is dangerous and toxic, just like our immune system, right? Our immune system lets in the good and keeps out the bad, or removes the bad if it gets in. So I think from like an animal standpoint, like back to our like most basic core, there was a time when we knew how to create those healthy boundaries, and we've sort of shut that off now. So now people repress their anger, repress their emotional systems, and consequently repress their immune systems. So it was interesting in Dr. Mate's talk he was doing, the lady that was with him, he asked her, so he, not Anita, he pulled a like volunteer up from the audience, and he was like, okay, sit in this chair over here. So it's like Kay and I just sitting across the table from each other. And he was like, okay, how do you feel about this boundary right here, this space between us? Like, how do you feel? You feel comfortable, right? Good. Feel good. He was like, what if I get up and I hover over you?
I would be like, hey.
So he like does that, right? And this lady, you could see she was a chronic people pleaser. It was a really interesting example to watch. She's just a random person in the audience. She volunteered to come up and like demonstrate this, right? So he's like, okay, how do you feel if I stand up and hover over you? And she's like, well, it's you, Dr. Mate, so I'm fine with it, right? He's literally like inches from her face. And he's like, okay, well, now what if I stand in your lap? Like, what are you going to do about it? What do you feel? And she's like, well, I guess I would ask you to get off. And he's like, well, what if I just say, I don't care what you, like, I don't care. No, I'm not going to get off. And she was like, well, I'd probably tell you needed to get off. He's like, I already told you I don't care what you need or what you want. I'm not going to get off. And he's like, what are you going to do? And she's like, well, like she's just struggling with this. Like she had to think. She's like, I mean, eventually I'd probably push you off. She's like, but like, I wouldn't want to be rude. And I'm like, this guy is literally standing on your lap and you're so afraid of being rude that you don't even push him off when he's physically hurting you. Yes. Like this was, and she wasn't.
I can relate. I get it.
Right. And she wasn't intentionally being this, like, you could tell it was just ingrained in her. Like, I am so ingrained not to be quote unquote rude that I'm going to tolerate this guy, first of all, being in my personal space. Like, she tolerated him getting to the point where he was standing on her lap. For me personally, if that guy was like just hovering over me, I'd be like, could you please sit down? You're making me nervous. And if he said no, I would get up and move my space, like out of his space, right? Like, I can control me. I can't necessarily control him. But like literally she's tolerating it to the point where he's standing in her lap and she says, well, I wouldn't want to be rude. I'm like, that is so classic.
She must be from the Midwest.
What people do. Yes. So classic. Like, caregiver, nurture others, take care of others. Others are needs first. She's more worried about his feelings than she is about the fact that he's like standing on her lap, which is obviously an unacceptable behavior.
Yes. Oh, I just saw this meme that was like a Midwesterner asking for help. And it's like, hey, would you want to do a favor? No worries if you're busy. I mean, you don't have to. I mean, if you'd rather run me over with a truck, that's fine. It's so Midwesterner. Like, so you want to sit on my lap? Yeah, that's fine. It doesn't bother me at all. Okay. I really like it. You can punch me too. It's fine.
If you want to take a couple of my teeth and put them in your mouth, that's okay.
That's fine.
It is so weirdo. Midwestern. No, it's literally like, but it was just such a classic example of how ingrained for her. It was so perfect, not scripted. to hear her say, well, I wouldn't want to be rude. And I'm like,
yes.
that is us. Like, people are oppressing us, abusing us. And we're like, I don't want to hurt their feelings. And here they are.
So not make waves. Like, no one wants to
I don't want to make waves. I don't want to rock the boat. Like, so I'm going to suppress all this.
My needs, my feelings.
All this anger, all this like uncomfortableness that I'm feeling in this situation. I'm going to repress all of that to protect your needs first, right? That's where it becomes unhealthy.
Yeah, this is a problem.
So it's one thing to do things that are kind for others. It's another to like enable unhealthy habits and behavior because you're too afraid of hurting their feelings.
Yes.
It was so classic. I wish I could play that scene for you guys, because I was just watching her and I'm like, oh, lady. And like, everybody's lives are different, right? But I've been through enough things in my life where I'm like, I would have been telling you to back off a while ago, quite a while ago.
Yes.
Right? Because I've been through this and I've learned from those mistakes of like, oh no, I need to protect my boundaries. But this poor lady
keep walking all over you. Yeah.
This poor lady hasn't maybe had that experience or that.
Yeah.
She hasn't been set free yet to do that. But oh man. So
that's funny.
The interesting thing about repressing our emotional systems, like that lady was, is when you repress your emotional system, when you push it down, it actually can turn against you in the form of negative self-talk, self-judgment, and self-loathing.
Because your soul sees yourself like not helping yourself. So
it's almost like an autoimmune condition, right?
Yeah.
In the same sense, when we repress our immune system, it can turn against you. So that's when we have autoimmune issues like lupus, Hashimoto's, multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, chronic fatigue syndrome, those sorts of things. That often comes from suppressing our emotional system, and those again, suppressing that emotional system suppresses that immune system. Our emotional system turns against us, just like our immune system turns against us.
Wow.
So those two are often related, right? So people who have a lot of negative self-talk may be more susceptible to autoimmune.
Wow.
So it's
fascinating. And I actually see that.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'm thinking of some people, and this is ringing 100% true.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's even more interesting that autoimmune conditions primarily affect women. Like 70 to 80% of autoimmune conditions occur in women. And that is the population most prone to putting others' needs above their own, suppressing their emotions, keeping quiet instead of speaking up. So literally this lady letting this guy stand in her lap because she doesn't want to be rude. No wonder those people get autoimmune conditions.
No problem.
So a healthy emotional system, like a healthy immune system, should be a boundary defense. So again, they're kind of playing like sister roles, right? We can look at them. They're analogous. Wow. And when you repress one, you mess with the other. So that's the idea behind the mind-body unity in action. Wow. And it explains why Anita, who we talked about at the beginning, when she came back to herself and then realized, like, okay, I'm not going to live this repressed person anymore. Her immune system stopped being repressed, and her body was able to fight off the cancer.
Wow. Okay, so, and I love how she was like, I have a purpose on earth. Is it kind of getting this message out there now? Is that, and also, I do think we're all multi-purpose filled of like, it's who we are. It's what we do. It's how we greet our children, our parents. It's you know, and it's also a job. And it's also, so for you, you know, the podcast is part of the purpose. And you're going to be a mom. So it's all of that. Mm-hmm. Did she say what she felt like hers was?
I bet in her book she does.
Okay.
She didn't in this
I
talk.
will read it because I'm sure it has to do with who she is as a person as well as spreading this message.
Yeah, and I'm sure spreading this message for other people who are
feel
living
oppressed.
like she did, right? And literally dying of cancer because of it. So,
wow.
I think maybe we can just kind of end it there because that feels like a whole. I have more notes, but that completes their talk.
Okay.
And I feel like this will wrap it up. So my next notes are from Dr. Jim Gordon, but I think I'd like to share that in another podcast because this really feels like a whole episode to me, completed.
Yeah, you nailed it. And I have so many thoughts and questions I'm going to throw at you for the next time.
Yes.
To add in there. And this was really a beautiful the mind-body connection, our feelings, like there's so much to it. It's amazing. So even how we are and how we show up to the world affects our health.
Right.
Which is fascinating.
And I think it's like, again, I know there are probably some people that are like, this is a nutrition podcast, right? Like,
yeah.
But it's the Renegade Nutrition
We're
Podcast.
renegades.
So I think nutrition takes you so far and is a huge part of it.
Yes.
But at the same time, if we're not taking care of physical, chemical, emotional all together, where it's kind of like, it's like having a bucket with a hole in it, right? And you can keep pouring water into it, which comes from good nutrition. But if you don't fix the hole, water is going to keep pouring out.
Yeah.
So you have to get to the root of every problem. And for a lot of people, that hole is caused by the emotional suppression. So it's something we have to talk about when we're talking about whole body health. Because if you just keep pouring nutrition into this leaky bucket, it will keep the bucket full, but it's a lot of work, right?
Yep. Yes.
Better to patch that
Maybe
hole.
like pour more water, water. Yep.
Better to patch that hole so that you can fill the bucket once and it stays filled.
Yep.
And that's when people have more leeway, as opposed to when they can't have any leeway in their diet or they go off the rails. That to me is an indication that there's other things going on, right?
Yeah.
Because you should be able to fill the bucket and stay full for quite a while.
Yes.
Right. So
good analogy.
Anyway, yes, thank you. It just came to me. So I just think like, I don't know. Again, it kind of borders philosophical, and I don't pretend to like have any great wisdom or knowledge in it. But when I hear things like this and I hear about that woman's experience, Anita's, where literally her suppression of who she was, her suppression of self led to this horrible chronic disease that was killing her.
Yeah.
And that once she realized her purpose and she came back and started releasing her emotions and not suppressing that system, she stopped suppressing her immune system and her body could fight the cancer. So I don't know. My goal of this podcast isn't just to talk about nutrition. It's to help people. So
yeah, this was amazing. And I am feeling so empowered to go like live my free and loving and good life and like express myself, and just like what she felt like she saw in her out of body experience. Like, for all of our listeners, you guys, like, go live your best life. Fill your cup up so then you can love and fill up other people's cups. And it's not selfish. We support it. Go be loved. Go be light. Go be expanded. Go do whatever the blank you want, as long as it's good.
Yeah, as long as it's good, right? Yes. And go be renegades.
Go be renegades.
Thanks, listeners.
Thank you for listening to the Renegade Nutrition Podcast.
Please keep in mind that this podcast is an educational service that provides general health information. The content on this podcast is not a substitute for direct, personal, professional medical care and diagnosis. You should always talk to your doctor before making a dietary or lifestyle change. Go be renegades!
Go be renegades!